Okay, I think we are live, you guys. I'm just trying to get us up on Instagram at the same time. But hi, Dan, Adam. Welcome. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, guys.
I didn't get the memo that I'm supposed to wear black today.
A day of we're mourning last night's city council meeting.
Yeah.
No.
We got a lot to cover today. It was a busy night last night at city council. A lot going on in the city.
Yeah, there was a lot going on with the city, and I'm so glad that we have all three of us here today to talk about it, because I'm excited to hear your opinions on some of the stuff that came up. One of which was commented on quite a bit in public comment and was a surprise to me, and I think a lot of people, and for some people, exciting news. For people in this neighborhood, not so exciting. But basically, the county, Saratoga County, voted last night to move forward with purchasing a piece of property for a permanent Code Blue facility. So that's something that the city has been trying to do for a year, or the city and Shelters of Saratoga and, various private individuals have been trying to do for years, as Code Blue has gotten kind of tossed around from location to location. So the fact that the county actually moved forward to purchase this property is a big deal.
It is a big deal. Wasn't there a kind of a feeling on some people's part that the county was sort of shirking its duty and maybe dumping it on the city?
Well, I think the feeling, what I was getting from the people who showed up at public comment, was mostly just that they had no awareness that this was even being considered by the county. And the way the county works, it goes through committees before it then goes to the full board. And so kind of unlike here, where we would have done probably multiple public hearings about it, and there would have been opportunities for people to weigh in, the neighbors in this situation didn't have that opportunity and were, found out about this online or wherever, and were unhappy about it, to say the least.
Yeah. You had a young couple there who lives next door to this, and it was heartbreaking because they work so hard on their house, and they have an apartment there. And you can't not say this will hurt their property value. This will hurt their standard of living. And people were up there crying, well, that's NIMBYism, and people need a place to go. But if you remember that, you also had a lady up there objecting to the hospital building a building next to her house, and everybody was applauding that and questioning why the hospital is going to do. And so I don't understand how that's not NIMBYism, but dropping a homeless shelter right next to a residential neighborhood or somebody's home is something that's okay. I've said for a long time, they need to find a place away from residential areas. I know the argument that a lot of these people need to be integrated and need access, and they need to be integrated in society, but they show a lot of anti-society behaviors, and putting them somewhere kind of on the outs, a little more on the outskirts of town, I really think is what's needed.
And just so, if I could ask a clarifying question of Robin or you, Adam, this is limited to Code Blue, right? When it's below a certain temperature where people need a place for shelter, not homeless services and so forth. At least initially, at least that's designed right now, correct?
So that's actually correct, and it's a really important distinction to make. So Code Blue is a state mandate from the governor that requires each county to provide an overnight shelter anytime the temperature dips below 32 degrees. So generally speaking, you see Code Blue open up sometime usually in early November, and it runs through, early April sometimes, depending on how cold or warm our spring might be. But it's not the year-round low barrier, no barrier shelter that the homelessness task force last year was making a recommendation for.
Yeah, so Code Blue was supposed to be for when the temperature dips below 32, but Shelters of Saratoga, I think rightfully so, said we can't staff for that, right? How do you staff for this 32 degree mark that next week it could be 7 days or 0 days? So they moved Code Blue for kind of a finite start and end date, regardless of the temperature. So it would be a homeless shelter all winter there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's probably pretty assumed. There's, and usually our winters, I mean, it's not often that it's in the 40s in the winter.
Right.
But I just have to say, on a personal note, Code Blue was located probably 4 doors down from me on Caroline Street for 3 winters when, I had all my kids. They were little. I found out on the news, like how this neighborhood found out. I had a lot of concerns. I was super pissed off that the city didn't give me a heads up about it. I met with Shelters of Saratoga. I got all my questions answered. My concerns were assuaged for the time being. And it ended up being like an incredibly positive experience for me and my family. And we didn't experience any crime, any danger elements. My property value didn't go down over those 3 years. Like nothing, none of these kind of apocalyptically bad situations.
Oh, you say
Didn't
that,
you volunteer? Didn't you volunteer for them?
And
as well?
I volunteered there a bunch. Yeah.
Why is it no longer there then?
Because the soul saving station, it was in the basement, and it was just like, honestly, it like wasn't fit for any humans to be sleeping in overnight. But it was a really tiny, dark underground space that just didn't have the capacity to house and feed this population. It was too small.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because yeah. Well, again, we've talked about this multiple times. I think I've had different experiences with shelters. Again, there was a church next to
We talked about
house. Yeah, that's had issues. And again, I think I understand the need for one of these shelters, but there's got to be a balance with where you put it. And like you said, this couple, it was multiple families yesterday. And again, you'll say, Dan, isn't it just for a code blue? Well, last city council meeting, they talked about Rise taking over the senior center and how it would just be for administrative purposes. And at last night's city council meeting, you had a prominent Democrat, Gordon Boyd, there saying that Rise should be able to offer services there and not just do administrative work. And that should become the long-term homeless shelter. And they should, and not just what it's kind of been leased to them for administrative roles. So again, slippery slope here. Once a place gets in, they can easily expand services and attract more of a kind of antisocial crowd. It's very hard to pull back, and that's why I feel for these neighbors.
Yeah, we have different experiences, but I mean, it's a tough topic. It's a tough one. It's something I think everyone thinks. Yeah.
Oh, to Adam's point, I guess I'm a little confused, and I wasn't part of any of this, so maybe there's good answers for it. I don't know why they couldn't or didn't find a place like Adam said, where it wasn't, smack dab in the middle of a residential area.
Partly because it does. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, was my question.
You do need to have homeless individuals be able to get access to it, like at any time throughout the night. So it can't be someplace that requires like significant transportation, especially if there's no public transportation available.
But they were talking about putting
a sidewalk.
Yeah. They were talking about putting the other the Rise facility on Outer Lake. In fact, that was the recommendation. That was kind of a happy medium, right? It was still kind of close to everything. Some people didn't like it. I get it. But it was divided by the Northway and a Stewart's and nothing else. That's a place like that seemed to split the baby, if you will.
This seems like a moment to me where the county isn't communicating with the city maybe in the way they should, because I don't know how much the city, if they had any input at all into the location that the county chose. But it seems like maybe it would have been more productive to have the two groups work together. I don't know.
Yeah. I hate to waffle, but I absolutely see both sides of this, right? I see
That's why you're in the middle square on the screen.
I know. Anyway, as of now, it's moving forward. I don't think, it sounds like they're going to meet with neighbors and try to have a, group of neighbors work with shelters and make everyone comfortable and do what they can. But it does sound like this is pretty done deal. So.
All right, let's talk assessments. Can we talk assessments?
Let's talk assessments. That sounds super boring, doesn't it? But it's not.
A homeowner or a property owner.
So basically there was a presentation by Commissioner Moran last night about updating our city's assessment rolls, which is the amount of value that the city taxes your house on. This is the easiest way to kind of describe it. And basically what he was asserting was that our assessment rolls are old, they're outdated, either because people have done renovations that they haven't filed with the city. And so the city's unaware that they've expanded their square footage or they've expanded their footprint somehow, or, people die and the property gets passed on to someone else and they don't know to update things with the city. He was going through a bunch of different situations in which basically the size or scope of a property would have changed, and the city might not be aware. So I guess this is where it got like a little bit, the undertone got a little like dark for me. I guess they've been using like this aerial drone photography and other methods to like go check properties around the city to see if people.
Yeah, real quick, I don't know if it's drone or just using satellite, like Google Maps. But essentially, what it's doing is looking at a database of people's rooftops and coming up using AI to generate a square footage of the house and referencing that compared to what we have on file, which is interesting. But go on, Robin, with your did get a little beware.
I think it was just like, I was like, oh, like it was just a little like unnerving for a moment to hear that like there had been aerial photography happening of like our neighborhoods and like your home potentially. It felt a little intrusive. But someone in public comment also had mentioned some of the phrasing of this in earlier iterations where they were like encouraging a neighbor to like report another neighbor to the city.
That was something different.
That was different?
That was different. Yeah, that was Commissioner. I'm so sorry. I know Sangvi, Commissioner Sangvi. I finally get it. Commissioner Sangvi did put on her personal Facebook page that if you hear your short-term rental neighbor making too much noise, to report them to code enforcement. So we can talk about that was a little different than reporting your neighbor for the assessment. But I have to say, with the assessments, it is, we all have to pay our fair share in taxes, right? Taxes, unfortunately, are something that have to be paid. The city probably is due for a reassessment. It hasn't been done, I think, since 2006 or 2008.
Yeah.
But it will never get done because anybody running saying, "Hey, I'm going to reassess all your homes and make you all pay more taxes," will never get voted in. So I think we talked about splitting the baby. I think Commissioner Moran's approach of saying, "Listen, if your house has gone under significant renovations, it should be reflected in the property value." And I don't listen, I'm small government, small tax kind of guy, but I don't have a problem with making sure what's being taxed is fair. So the tax you pay is your home value times a multiplier, right? So it might be 2%.
It's like 80. I think we get taxed on like 82.5 or something like that of our.
Yeah. It gets complicated. Like they take and I don't understand that, but they take like 82% of your house and then multiply it by like 4% or some numbers around those lines. But so that's how you derive what you pay for your property tax. Again, the issue is if your home was worth $100,000 and you put $100,000 into it, your home's now worth $200,000. And I do think it's fair that should, you put a $100,000 addition on, your home is now worth more. It should be reflective in the property tax roll. So it's hard to say, hey, I like more taxing and more taxes, but I think this is we talk about equity and equity. This is an equitable way to make sure that people are paying their fair share of taxes. If you want to talk about what the tax rate is, then I might have some issues. I still think we're spending too much money, but I think everybody's home should be assessed fairly.
It theoretically could result in a tax reduction for some people, correct? Because if a lot of people have homes that are worth more than they're assessed at, and there's a reassessment to update things, those. And the city budget remains as it should, and they don't see it as a reason to increase taxes. The budget there could be a tax cut for some people, I would think, or in effect.
Like, given how our property values have gone up like so steadily over the years, that there would be a scenario in which someone would be paying too much.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I just feel like the property values in Saratoga Springs have been like on such a steady and long increase. Like, I'm not sure how someone.
Right. How is possible somebody's home 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago was assessed more than it's worth right now? Everybody in Saratoga, if you own property in Saratoga, the value's just gone up.
But some have gone up at a higher rate than others, right? And as long as they don't use this to increase spending, theoretically, some people could get a reduction. Theoretically,
you know who those people are? I'll tell you, those people are the people who's getting their home next to the homeless shelter. Those people.
I knew something like that was coming.
They should be excited about this reassessment because their property value is about to go off a cliff.
No, you know what?
The thing is, though, something like that does not go into an assessment consideration, right? That's not part of the equation.
I do know that I think Commissioner Moran did say that like they would also help people see if they qualified for any kind of like star exemptions or stuff like that they might not know about that would help bring down, what they're paying in taxes. But either way, I think it's a politically risky move because I think any kind of reassessment is usually met with unhappy constituents. But I'll be interested to see how Commissioner Moran like threads the needle with this one. To bring the assessment rolls to a more current place without, pissing off all of his constituents.
And I hope I don't upset some of my friends, but I'm all for it. I think it's time. It continues an unfair situation. If we don't update our records, let's assess these homes for what they're worth. And right now, the city database does not have the proper data to determine what the homes are worth.
Adam, do you remember he said one thing about like if this was like a citywide reassessment, they would expect to have like 700 or 800 lawsuits come out of a reassessment. Do you remember him saying that number?
Yeah, which is true because people are going to have you got to imagine you're going to have a lot of grievances. You're going to have a lot of people who have the pocketbooks to hire an attorney and fight it in court, and those, I think that's kind of what was one of his points too, is that if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're struggling to pay your taxes, property taxes, and they go up, you're not going to be able to fight it, right? You might be able to show up on grievance day, but if you're a high net individual with an expensive home and you don't like your assessment, you can show it if you fight it yourself, but you could also fight it with attorneys. And that there is the equity question there of how the rich are going to be able to better defend themselves against this. And it'll cost the city a lot of money because now the city's going to have to hire attorneys and
right.
He's getting good at that at this point.
That is the cost of doing business, though. When you do a reassessment, they know that. Of course, this city it'd be much higher than perhaps another city, but I do think that is the cost of doing business.
It is. Yeah. The big cost, I think, is politically, is that you'll never be able to get elected or stay elected or not be hated if you do a blanket reassessment.
Yeah. I agree. I think it is politically risky, as we said.
Our friend Andy will be salivating.
One thing, we have a comment here from Mike A.B. who says,
there we go.
But who really trusts Dylan Moran to do this with any semblance of fairness? This is the same guy who court documents show was offering, quote, concierge service to political allies on grievance day. That is not a good look. I agree. Not a good look. But, yeah.
Let me give credit where credit is due for him. And I'm not a Dylan Moran fan, so that I'm saying this is significant. Just like you said, it takes some political courage to even bring this issue up, to even talk about it. I will give credit where credit is due. He's not, at least on the surface, he's addressing something that needs to be addressed, even though there may be some political cost.
And, much like they did with paid parking and short-term rentals, I mean, this is definitely not a commissioner who's afraid to tackle challenging city issues. So that's, I commend him for that. But we'll see how it turns out. One thing we kind of skipped over in the beginning that I think was on a lot of people's minds and in the media a little bit was the public comment rules in general for meetings. And I actually thought the mayor did really well last night, and I'm curious what your opinions are. But essentially, they reaffirmed that everyone gets 3 minutes. You can't come up twice. If you're interrupted by the audience or a city council member, there is the possibility that you'll get some time restored if you've been interrupted while you're making public comment. And
I don't know about that. I mean, I think the issue is, and this is what the city council is struggling with, is if the mayor has any discretion or do we have to have these rules and follow them to the absolute T, or does the mayor have discretion? And I find a lot of people are split on this. I mean, I personally think the mayor, if you have somebody up there who's making a public comment, and again, let's just say you throw out being discriminated against the protected classes, right? So of course the mayor can't, political affiliation, race, sexual orientation, those classes obviously should not take into factor how long you get to talk. But and it's funny because people are split on this, but I think the mayor, being the captain of the ship here, should have the ability to call somebody up again, to change the time. If you have more people or less people, change the amount of time, again, based on his discretion and what's important for the city and for the city to hear. But not everybody feels that way.
I think that sounds great in theory, but I think it's virtually impossible to execute in a way that doesn't invite just immediate criticism. Because the second you let any two of the same people go over their time, you're going to just walk right into accusations of being biased or showing favoritism towards this group or that group or these political allies. Or I just think the waters get very muddied very quickly. So I personally am a fan of I think it should just be 2 minutes. Honestly, I think 3 minutes is too long. I think we should go back to the 2 minutes, but I think they should allow as many people who show up to public comment. And there shouldn't be a limit on the general time period. Because if you put in the effort to show up at City Hall and you have something to say to your city council, they should sit there and listen for as many people who show up that night.
Isn't that the point Commissioner Sangvi made last night? I believe
yes, it was.
And I disagreed with it at the time, and I'll tell you why. Just because last night's meeting, I don't even know when it ended, because at 10:30, I finally said, screw this, I'm going to sleep, and I shut it off. So we have to find a balance between giving people, and I say people as opposed to Saratoga Springs citizens, because a lot of these speakers live outside the city. I know they're allowed to, but it does throw me off that my city council can sometimes be bogged down by someone that lives down in Latham. There has to be a balance in getting the city's business done, so we're not there till 11:30 at night or whenever it ended last night, and giving people the right to speak. I do see a balance. I see your point, Robin. I do, but at some point, and the mayor's been doing a solid job of policing this or being that, however you want to term it. Not an enviable position. He gets criticism for it. He's doing a solid job.
Yeah. And Dave Buchan, who's the chair of the Conservative Party, spoke at public comment last night and actually had run the data and gone back through all the city council meetings to get an average of the length of time people spoke and then the average number of people they had at city council meetings to public comment. And I think he said it was 2.7 minutes usually that people averaged in speaking. And then 10, I think it was an average of 10 people public commenting. So it didn't seem like there have been a lot of instances in which the council, meeting is taken over because of, this huge influx of public commenters. So it was helpful that he had actually run the numbers to kind of bear that out. But anyway, so as it is now, the 3-minute rule is in effect, but I'm kind of unclear as to the time limit.
Yeah, I'm unclear too. I just think they let people talk.
Yeah.
Discretion.
Well, in any case, I know we want to talk about the DPW race, and also, should we talk about real quick the Belmont situation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The numbers.
Yeah.
The Belmont numbers. This was interesting.
This was really interesting. So Commissioner Sangvi at the beginning of her agenda presented the sales tax figures from this June compared to June 2023, because she knew people were eagerly awaiting the economic impact of the Belmont being here. And I actually have the video of her introducing this that I just want to play for our listeners, and then we can comment.
We received 1.8 million approximately in sales tax compared to 1.76 million last year. So the percentage change from June 2023 to June 2024, which is the month of Belmont that we had here, which I know everybody was waiting, and there was a lot of anticipation. The net gain in sales tax was $81,689.78.
So let me just take that off.
Robin, that's a new feature, right? We haven't done this before. You're on your game today. You ate your Wheaties.
Producing like crazy over here. So there was more kind of context to those numbers that she gave a little bit, going over the cost that we paid for public safety and for the increased public safety, which was like $100,000. And then there was a couple $1,000s for DPW. And so when she backed out the expenses versus the small sales tax increase, the number she ended up with was that there was a net income of $80,000 to the city as the economic impact of the Belmont being here. That doesn't include occupancy tax or short-term rentals, which we don't tax at the moment. But I was kind of stunned by that because
I have a lot of questions of what the number she gave. First of all, she starts out saying the sales tax in June last year was 1.8 million, and this year was 1.76 million, right? And so that would be a difference of $40,000. And she then gives an $80,000 number. So something's not jiving there. The other issue I have with this is that if your business makes less than revenues generates more than $300,000 or less quarterly, so that's basically $1.2 million a year. Saratoga's full of small businesses. You haven't even filed your sales tax yet. You file your sales tax quarterly. Now the quarter does not align with the calendar quarter, but this quarter runs June, July, and August. So if you're a small business, and we have a lot of them in Saratoga, you haven't even filed your sales tax numbers yet. So I have no idea where she's getting these numbers, the sales tax numbers. And then on the expense side, how do you calculate overtime, right? So I guess my question is that overtime is any hours over 40 hours in a work week, right? So does she attribute it? So if somebody's working 5 days and 2 of them are at the Belmont, or the 2 days at the, or if they work 6 days and one's at the Belmont, is that Belmont Day the overtime, or is the Monday they started their work week the overtime? So for me, these numbers are very fishy to me. I'd love to see more of where this data came from. And I think it goes to show, she's on record as saying that horse racing is a dying industry. I don't think she's a fan of horse racing, and I just think this is kind of a cheap shot at it.
Boy, I disagree with you a little bit because she was nuanced here, and she acknowledged that the numbers were not complete. Although your point is very well made that they may be so incomplete that they're worthless, but she acknowledged there's intangibles here and that they didn't do the bed tax yet. You're right. I don't think she's a fan of horse racing either. On that point, I agree with you. But it just I kind of lost my train of thought here. But on the overtime, Adam, in the state government, which of course is not city government, I get that, but they track their overtime by codes. What is the reason for the overtime? So if they have anything remotely resembling what the state has, they can track that overtime by a code. What was the reason? Well, there was a car accident. Okay, that's not Belmont. Okay, there was an arrest. That's not Belmont. Okay, I had to go do security at the track. That's also Belmont.
Usually for like a special event weekend or just a special event in general, they have the cost of the extra staff that they're going to need, the extra overtime, like before the event happens. So they have some idea of what it's going to cost. And I feel like the Belmont week with the concert on Wednesday night and then the track. So they definitely would have known like approximately what their overtime costs were going to be going into it.
Well, I guess the final thing I'll say, I think she kind of arrived at the net gain for the city of being even a push. And that's what municipalities, that's what they should do. Municipalities are not in the business of making money. They're in the business of generating the least amount of money possible to provide services to their residents.
Hold, please. This event and the track in general bring in a ton of people to our city and put a ton of pressure on our infrastructure, on our public safety, et cetera. And they compensate us through VLT money for that impact. And so there is an economic factor,
Oh, I agree. But I guess my point is the fact that we did something as a municipality that broke even, great, perfect. That's exactly what we should, we should only be taxing. A municipality should only be generating as much revenue as it needs to operate. And anything more is overtaxation. So if we brought in enough money just to operate correctly, for me, that's bingo. That means our sales tax is a good number.
So you wouldn't want NYRA to pay like a higher admission tax or anything to bring up what they're giving the city to offset the stress and wear and tear and public safety pressure it puts on us when we have the track.
I would want NYRA to pay the exact amount that it takes to relieve those pressures, not anything more. So that's my point. My point is, yes, I think that we should be getting that money, and that money's, again, that's not NYRA's money. That ultimately, well, it's coming from the better. It's a little different than the taxpayer, but the taxpayer's money should only be paid to the municipality just enough so the municipality has enough to do what they need to do to provide services for the residents there. Anything more is overtaxation.
I guess what's hard for me though is that like when it was announced that the Belmont was coming here, there was like an immediate, articles coming out from the Chamber of Commerce and Discover Saratoga with like this massive multi-million-dollar number as like the economic impact of having the Belmont here. And so it was like, like $300 million of economic impact. It was a massive number. And so then when you have that in your mind and then you hear that the city only made $80,000, it's just kind of a confusing thing. Yeah. But I think, at the end of the day, everyone experienced like the financial windfall or lack of windfall in a very different way.
My brother who owns the Lyrical Ballard bookstore, which is on Philo Street, it's a great shop to stop in. His business lost money. They were down 50%.
Right.
I've heard a lot of business people downtown. I talked to a lot of them.
Really?
And they had told me something similar. The numbers for them for Belmont were in some cases nothing because people avoided downtown during the Belmont thinking it was loaded, and yet there was nobody downtown because everybody was at the track. So some of them they're almost down on Belmont. One shopkeeper told me she made $73 that day. The same thing to some degree with track season. Some people downtown rely on locals, not tourists.
I do think that it took a lot of wind out of the sails of like the opening weekend in July for the track here. Like it seemed like we didn't have the excitement, the energy, the people. It kind of like took the wind out of that a bit, which I don't think is a good thing. And I would love to see like the hats off, festival come back and really like jazz up that opening weekend again. But
that's why these numbers are relevant. We have to look at them. But there's so many intangibles. Like Adam said, we don't know if they're complete. To hyperanalyze them on a cost-benefit ratio when the world was looking at Saratoga Springs, New York, it was one of the biggest events in the city's history. I don't want to use those numbers to hyperanalyze and we lost 30 grand. I won't come to that conclusion.
Right.
But we do have to look at them, right? For due diligence, we have to, because if it is way out of whack and all of a sudden we're getting a tax increase because we've held a couple of these and so forth, obviously we got to, take
those numbers were, I had multiple people kind of approach me saying, are these numbers true? Are these numbers true? And my neighbor called and said, hey, we made $6 grand renting our house out. My kid made $500 on a lemonade stand. How the heck did the city only make 80 grand? And again, to the neighbor, I said, well, that's probably 80 grand too much. I wish the city would have just broken even and that meant our sales taxes right. But anyway.
Let's pivot here because we have a guest and that I know we want to bring in. Oscar. Oscar, are you with us?
How are you? I'm here.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Oh, sir. Wow.
We're very formal on this podcast. Very formal.
I look around for my father. And he's dead. We're not going to find him.
So we're happy to have you on today, Oscar. You were a little bit of the part of the controversy last night at the city council.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's introduce Oscar. You are a local attorney.
Yes, sir.
And you represented the Department of Public Works or Commissioner Golub or both?
Both. Commissioner Golub and his executive secretary.
Okay, all right, and so you kind of have an intimate knowledge of what's going on with some of this on-call pay and then the representation and the payments to the attorneys.
Unfortunately.
Yes. So can you share because you've had an unusual experience in all of this?
Yeah.
I know our viewers are familiar with the kind of controversy surrounding Commissioner Moran's legal bills, where he, when the DA's office began this investigation into this alleged on-call pay scandal, he sought out representation, hired an attorney who was quite expensive, I think charged something like $1,100 an hour, and racked up $1,250, and spent about $60,000 in legal bills before bringing them to the city council for approval. they were approved, but then there was a lawsuit filed by Mike Brandy, who's the Republican city chairperson, to file a temporary restraining order stopping the payment from the city to Dylan Moran's attorneys. So that had this kind of follow through effect on your bills. Am I correct in saying that, Oscar?
Well, I think the difference is, in my opinion, I've read the rules, it's reasonability. I represented one person for 4 hours at $450 an hour for $1,800. Then the second person was 1.2 hours, $450 an hour, total due $540. They're done. They've been exonerated. They're done. I've been to the state police office with them in Malta. The investigator's name is Andrew Werner. He's the senior investigator at the Malta barracks. I was, as you know, I was a public defender for 31 years, so I know a lot of the police officers. We're done. We're being exonerated. No more. And I charged $2,350, and they didn't pay me for 3 months. If they didn't approve it last night, I had the lawsuit ready. What really bothers me is I've represented people on that city council and their families for no charge. I represent Healing Springs for no charge. Adam, you remember this when I did the represented Spa Catholic against the homeless shelter being next door? No charge. And this is how they treat me? For the 9/11 ceremony, they never had a New York City firefighter who was there. I don't know if you know this or not, but my grandfather started the UFA, the Uniformed Firefighters Association, the union, in 1933. He was a lawyer for 58 years. I worked in his law firm. More important, my son is a New York City firefighter at Engine 23 in Manhattan. So I complained a little bit because last year they had the politicos sitting in the front row and speaking. They've probably never been there. They don't know anything about it. And the way you know is people who were there call it the pile, not ground zero. That's how you know. The firemen call it the pile. So I went to someone I know from the FDNY through my years of growing up, and I do a little work for them now. And he lives in Malta. He's a retired captain. He was there. He went after his buddies. He lost 6 of his men in his firehouse. And I got him to speak. I have a flag that was given to me by my son's captain for this. It flew over what was left of the trade centers for 2 days afterwards. I'm going to bring that. It's all tattered and stuff, but we'd expect that. I can't believe they took 3 months to pay me. I am so hurt. I will never do anything else for this city council. The bad part is I got lied to.
Wow, I did not know you were coming on here to so fired up. And I'm not saying you don't have a right to be, but I'm just.
I can calm it down. That's fine.
No, you don't have to calm it down. You're fine.
So, yeah, no, I'm just I'm just giving you my reaction. Like, wow, I didn't expect this.
Yeah, well, I think Robin did. We've been talking about it a little bit, and Adam did after he told me last night.
Yeah.
I'm a litigator. I get hyped up. I get that. So the mayor, I called him because there was something really bad that was put on Facebook by, I can't say who. It says the Saratoga Springs Republican Committee. I don't know who it was. Despite a standing court order prohibiting $60,000 in legal payment to Dylan Moran's high-dollar private attorneys arising out of the on-call subpoena, the city is proposing to pay even more legal fees on behalf of DPW employees arising out of the same investigation. The 2 increases are for consideration on tomorrow night's pre-agenda meeting and presumably will be the agenda for Tuesday's city council meeting. Either the city attorney's office is asleep at the wheel or has no idea what they're doing. Now, this is a Republican talking about Dave Harper, another Republican. So either way, it's extremely concerning that this matter even made it to the agenda. We stand ready to commence litigation once again to protect taxpayers' funds in the face of this clear disregard. $2,350 as opposed to $61,000, and my guys are all done. What I hear from Dylan's lawyers, they haven't even been to the state police yet. Haven't even been interviewed yet. So
let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go ahead.
This investigation is a criminal investigation, which is not covered under the public officers law. what about the argument saying, listen, you're not representing them in their official capacity. Thus, it should not be the city that's on the hook for your bill. It should be them as the potential targets of a criminal investigation. What would you say to that?
I have to disagree on my people's part because there was no criminality on their part. I think I read the law. I think if they're exonerated, then they get paid back, or the city pays for them.
If they get exoneration, something that would, I mean, would the state police ever say you're exonerated, or would they? You said
no, they did. They did to me.
They did. They said exonerated. This is done. They're
done.
Not.
Yeah. I mean, I can have a different relationship with the state police, having been a public defender for 31 years. I know most of them. So anyway, trying to be nice and transparent, I called the mayor and told him this. He goes, well, if there's that, I'm not voting for it. I said, okay, and I prepared a lawsuit. So then he told me that Mr. Harper told him that there was a settlement, that was a conference with Judge Freestone on my bill. I have nothing pending in front of Judge Freestone.
Just to clarify for people, Judge Freestone is the judge that's presiding over the temporary restraining order against Commissioner Moran's legal bills.
Right. So I wrote Judge Freestone, copying the other attorneys. I said, what's going on? Here's the letter I got back from her. I discussed your August 12, 2003 correspondence with Judge Freestone. This is from her court attorney. In response, she wishes to advise that there are presently nothing before this court relative to your law firm, nor the services referenced in your email and the corresponding legal bill. The lawsuit mentioned, namely, matter of Brandy versus City of Saratoga Springs et al., and the corresponding order show cause with temporary restraining order pertains solely to payment for services rendered by Oric, Harrington, and Sutcliffe to Commissioner of Accounts Dylan Moran and his deputy. Thank your attention for the foregoing. I wasn't even part of that. And the mayor said that Dave Harper told him there was a conference. There was no conference. Chris Starsik, representing Brandy, asked for a conference, and the judge said no. So why would they lie to me? That's what hurts me more than anything.
I just
have
to know.
The mayor lied to you, to clarify?
Yep.
Is it possible he was just not informed properly, confused, something that he wasn't actually lying to you? Is it possible?
Anything's possible. You know that. But I felt he made a statement that there was a scheduled conference on my case.
Just an observation about how these things were communicated. Yeah. It does appear to me that there has been miscommunication over this issue within everyone involved, largely because Dave Harper isn't giving super definitive opinions. So maybe that was part of why this wasn't communicated correctly. I don't know. It just feels like when Dave Harper, who's the city attorney, is called up to speak about this in front of the city council, he's not giving kind of definitive or strong legal opinions one way or the other on it. And so I could see how that could confuse the matter for the council people.
I understand that, but as a lawyer, you check your notes, you do everything,
right.
Before you make a statement.
Right. And honestly,
you better be right. I learned that a long time ago.
It's a strange situation because politics are obviously involved here, but in a way that seems counterintuitive to an extent.
So last night, and then Tim Cole and I have been talking because I asked him for the 9/11 ceremony. I'm going to bring that red striped flag, which honors the deceased firefighters that were flying over the ruins of the Trade Center. I asked him, can we get a fire truck there, put the ladder out, we call it a boom, and hang the flag from there. And he said, oh, yeah, you've been great. Thank you. Great idea. And then he votes against it. Give me getting paid. I have no idea why.
He abstained.
Oh, he abstained? Okay.
Yes. And I think, no, that's all right. I think largely it had to do with this difference of having a possible criminal charge pending versus like a civil situation. That's kind of how it seemed to me. But also it seemed that the mayor voted to pay these bills, and the other council people were really persuaded by that email from Judge Freestone.
Well, that's my other question, Robin. Why didn't the city attorney get a letter like that? Why did I have to spend another hour of my time?
Yeah.
When I was done? I didn't bill them for that hour of my time. And if I do, I'm sure they're not going to pay it. Why do I have to write Judge Freestone? Why couldn't Dave Harper? I have to push my own thing to get paid? I shouldn't have to do that. I represent some unions in New York. Robin, you know which ones. I bill a Monday. They Federal Express a check Tuesday.
That sounds like a client I want to have.
Yeah, well, move to New York City. You can have them.
Sign me up. No, I think it's a kind of a crazy situation and very unique in how it all played out. I'm
$140.
That's Commissioner Songvi was making the point that like the city can't start having a reputation for not paying the people it's contracting or vendors. I mean, that's just not. Yeah.
I think when you run the city council, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Kim wouldn't pay the $25,000 deductible on a case they settled.
Yeah.
A first-year law student knows about deductibles.
Yeah.
Anybody does. So I don't buy that one. They just didn't want to pay me.
All of this underscores that this city council needs to get their act together and have very structured procedure for what we're paying, what the procedure is to get paid, and how we're paying it.
Yeah.
And Oscar, I'm not trying to get on a tangent from your point.
No, go ahead.
This city, there's just too much dysfunction in the city. Robin, you know, well, you saw it from the inside.
I was just going to say that city council is dysfunctional.
Yeah, and this issue is weeks or months old, and it seems like they haven't moved 1 inch on establishing or reestablishing or clarifying a procedure herein.
This was one of the reasons why last night's meeting was so kind of like mind-numbingly difficult to watch, because there's been so much discussion about this issue, and it keeps coming back to like, well, should we write the process first, or should we write the process after we engage the attorneys? Or do we go back to the debate over reasonableness? Or do we, like, it just kept, it kept getting picked at from all these kind of unproductive.
But with all due respect, no one can say that $2,340 for two people getting them exonerated is unreasonable.
I agree. I just don't know at what number reasonable goes to unreasonable. Like that's, I think, what's so hard to define.
It's like porn.
I was just going to say, it's like porn. Yeah.
Yeah, you know the answer. Yeah, and that's why I think we all get with the accounts the representation there. That again, that feels like it's certainly bordering on unreasonable, right? But Oscar's your bill for and especially because you're the tradesman in this. You're the worker, you're the working man. You put in your time. The city should have figured out how you're going to get paid. Whether again it's whose responsibility is up for debate, but not the fact that you should have got paid earlier.
Well, they ignored me. I tried. They ignored me. No. We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. I think. I don't know who's running this city. I really don't. Maybe Mike Brandy is. I'm not sure. But I hate to get lied to, and I got lied to. And why do I have to wait for my money? I did my job. I want to call the mayor and say, did you get paid last week? I didn't. That's not right. I have a kid in law school, Michigan State. You know what that costs a year?
A lot, I bet.
A lot.
Quite a lot.
I just am so hurt. I will never represent the city again. I'm seriously considering an offer in New York City to get away from here because I have no respect for these people at all. None. Yeah. I know they tried to not pay me. I know that.
I have a clarification question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure because I was listening to the city council meeting on a phone.
Yeah.
They did vote. There were 3 votes last night to finally pay you. Is that correct?
Yeah. After I sent the first bill, which was, there were 2 people again. I sent the first bill on May 9th, $1,800. Then the second person got interviewed, and I sent the second bill June 13th. Nothing.
So, Oscar, one thing that one of our commenters here is bringing up is that you sent a letter or an email to the city at some point in early July saying that you were willing to wait to be paid, or you no longer wish to be paid.
Not true at all. Not even, no way. I said to someone at Public Works, I can wait a couple weeks to figure that out, or even a month. And I think that's fair. $2,300 isn't going to kill my practice.
Right.
The point is, Dylan's law, they went down to, after, this is what I'm told, you probably know more than me. After the vote for Dylan's money, they went downstairs, wrote a check, and sent it out the next day. That's why the judge did a TRO, and I've talked to the other lawyer, and he said it's in their trust account. You know what a trust account is? We can't spend it. And the judge said, don't spend it. Keep it in the trust account. Okay. The next day, I call up this morning, I'll get paid September 6th.
I did actually also hear that the check was cut basically immediately after the vote. And so that was my understanding too.
You're right.
Again, I think this all just underscores like
that
there needs to be a standard in a process.
I will never, ever, ever represent the city again.
To clarify, was that check cashed and just the money's being held in the trust account? Or
No. Lawyers have trust account where you put the money in, and then when you earn it, you take it out. If you do an hourly case. So they voted on it. A check was sent to the lawyer the next day. Then Mr. Brandy filed this lawsuit, and the judge said to the other lawyer, hold it in your trust account. You can't spend it till I say you can.
But the check was cash, though. I mean, that money is not. It's
put in a trust account, or
but it's not. It's not in the
Oscar. Is the check uncashed and physically in an account there, or is it cashed and the money is held in the?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I know that they have a depository in West Virginia, this law firm in New York, and that's where they put all their money. Then when they earn it, they take it out. And I was told that money is in their West Virginia depository.
I will say one of the things I found a little troubling about the discussion they were having about this was this possibility that employees, they could be paying for an employee's attorney, but then criminal charges could be filed, in which case the employee would have to reimburse the city. And then they were like, this council seems satisfied that one way or the other, the city would be made whole no matter what happened.
Right.
To me, the idea that you would have to go after the employee to reimburse the city seems like a lot more stickier than they made it sound.
I agree with you, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think the employee has to be cleared of all charges, whether at a trial or whatever. Then the employee gets, then it's okay.
We're talking, I reversed it. Yes, you're right. Yeah. The employee pays for the attorney and then gets paid back when they're cleared of any criminal charges.
My people have been cleared. That's the whole point.
Oh no, but I was just going to point out that to me, we all know what the city hall employees make. I think the burden of having to pay out of pocket and then wait to get reimbursed by the city is also like equally crazy in this scenario.
I think that's a punishment. You haven't been convicted yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a huge financial burden.
Yeah.
I mean, for most people, even, paying a reasonable amount per hour, $350, $400 an hour is still a ton of money to the, average city hall worker.
Your employee makes $50,000. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm so disgusted with them. I can't. A local guy, they did that to me after I've represented members of the city council and or their families for no charge. Nothing.
Well, it's a shame that they weren't able to work out the process or resolve the issue in the time in which you were like, yeah, it's okay, I can wait a little bit.
I live here. I work here. I love Saratoga Springs, but I can't live like that. Yes, I said you could wait a month, hash it out with Dylan's lawyer, and I got nothing. And then I keep harping on this, but I have a big problem with liars. I do. And I think all of you know my history. Yeah, I don't lie. I gave that up a long time ago. You get away with that once, you lie to a judge or another lawyer. So what bothers me is they said there was a conference scheduled, and that's absolutely not true. I don't know why he lied to me.
Oscar, in fairness, you're stating it emphatically. In fairness, with all this dysfunction, it could have been a misunderstanding, an honest mistake. I don't know that. I'm not internally, but and you have every right to be fired up. I support you. I just want to play kind of, hey, you may be accusing somebody of lying that simply was misinformed.
Okay, Ken, I respect your opinion. You know that.
Thank you.
We thank you for respecting our differences of opinion. That's what this whole platform is created for.
That you can talk and agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Most people can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing.
And don't leave us. Come on. Don't leave town. Don't let this.
I can't be around these people.
I need you
now
to
I have to wait 2 weeks to get paid. And they have paid Dylan the next day, Dylan's lawyer. What's with that?
Can I ask a quick related but separate question here?
Sure.
Commissioner Sungvi requested last night for approval, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I think she made the motion. Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
and I lost track of that there a little bit. That got passed.
It was with Snyder, Kylie Corbett Cox.
Yeah.
I can't remember the outcome.
Jimmy Snyder is a real good friend of mine. His office is right down the street from me.
Yeah.
He's charged $525 for him. He's a partner. For an associate, I think they said $425. I have 41 years of experience, and I charge $450.
I think she might have pulled her item from the agenda. I think that might have been the outcome.
Okay.
But I would have to go back and double check. But I remember the conversation, and I did also. It was my understanding that the legal work for Commissioner Marin and his deputy was kind of ongoing still, too. So it just seems like there's a real urgency here that is not being reflected with what the city council is putting out to address this, like this issue of process and reasonableness. Like it seems like they needed to act on this a while ago, and then they need to be able to put something up like ASAP so these issues don't persist.
Well, I can tell you, I've done Judge Freestone. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I was just saying, or at least it seems like they haven't done a thing on it. If it's complicated and they didn't get the whole base yet, I get that.
Judge Freestone and I grew up in this business together. We're almost the same age. I'm older. I've known her for a long, long time. She is one of the best judges around, and she will get to the bottom of this. And it takes time. She will get to the bottom of it. There's probably going to be oral arguments heard. There's probably going to be a lot of things going on. But I understand Judge Freestone is a great judge, and she will get it right. I know that. I bet my bottom dollar on that. But the point is, I'm not going to beleaguer it, but my guys are exonerated and done 2 months ago.
Well, I can just say that as someone who also had to engage legal counsel because of an investigation as a result of my public service, that situation is just so stressful in and of itself. I can't imagine adding another layer of whether or not I was going to be reimbursed or my attorney was going to be paid, having that become this big issue, amongst the other legalese. It just seems like a rotten situation all around, and hopefully one that the council will address and resolve. So, you, other attorneys, anyone who's providing a service or a contract to the city doesn't experience this issue with payment, because we don't want to have that kind of reputation, and we don't want people to have this kind of experience. But my hope is, Oscar, we will have a magnificent 9/11 ceremony.
I think it will be. I said John Viola's coming. He was a captain of 3 different firehouses. He lost 6 of his men there, or women and men. And he's a wonderful person. He's one of the reasons my son became a New York City firefighter. He got Glens Falls, Albany, Saratoga, and New York City. And I asked him, why are you going to New York? Is it because your great-grandfather started the union? He said, no, best fire department in the world. That's all I had to hear. John Viola, and you may remember the name, Scott Hickey. He was the chief at Round Lake. He went down to New York about 20 years ago, and they both said to him, come down here now.
I mean, there was a reason I grew up in Manhattan idolizing firemen.
I grew up in Brooklyn, Midland High School.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm glad we'll have a good 9/11 ceremony. I put my feelings away for that. The first responders are more important than I am. So I put my feelings away for that. I bring the flag. Someone's going to introduce John Viola, and then that's it.
Well, as a New Yorker, I really appreciate your efforts in helping with that ceremony and bringing in the level of people and the sentiment that you're bringing in. That means a lot to me as a New Yorker. So I thank you for that, Oscar.
Thank you. It means a lot to me. Living in New York, I pray every day I don't get that phone call.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
In Manhattan, he's at Engine 23, 58th and 8th. Very busy area, right?
Yeah, Midtown crazy.
That's where he is.
Well, we will keep him in our thoughts and thank him on our behalf for his service and being one of New York's bravest. That is a very impressive and courageous thing to do. And in the meantime, we've gone way over our hour over here. But Oscar, we want to thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you guys for listening to me what we call it, Adam, rant or rave or whatever I do. But it really just hurt me that I do things for these people and this is how they treat me. That's what really hurt me. If I didn't know them, it'd be different. But I do know them. And this is what they do. So
I feel like I'm the customer service department for the city.
There you go.
I want to solve this for you as a customer.
Don't buy from the city of Saratoga. There you go.
No, come on.
Well, from you, yeah.
All right,
At your brother's bookstore, yes.
There we go. Thank you so much, Oscar.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Our pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Well, it's a bummer to hear about anyone who has, such close ties to Saratoga and the city have such a bad experience. And, it stinks. But I think the whole situation is super complicated. And I don't think the city council has addressed it really, effectively. And it's kind of created a little bit of a shitstorm.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember where this all started with this on-call pay nonsense that if you look back when they introduced this, we thought it was a bad idea. And then how it was rolled out and how, yes, some deputies took advantage of it and abused it. And now it's just snowballed into, look how much it's costing tens of thousands of dollars, not just the $5,000 and $6,000 that these deputies took who may or may not have been entitled to it, but just the snowball effect now of the lawyers and the bad feelings and the ill will and the just the chaos that's pursued. Just go out there and do what's right, and you avoid stuff like this.
It's a tough one. It is a tough one indeed. Guys,
change. Sorry.
What's that?
Charter change. I think we need to amend the charter and recreate the city government.
Oh,
I know a discussion for another day, but I had to blurt that out.
Well, yeah. There was other lawyer talk at the meeting last night, but we can get into it on another episode. It's too much. I don't think I can even think about lawyers in the city for another minute after listening to pre-agenda and last night's meeting. I'm at max capacity. Should we do some cheers and jeers, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you got for me? What do you have for me while I pull up a little cheer and jeer graphic? I'll
just go real quick. I just have one cheer for Harvey Fox. He spent 43 years on the Downtown Special Assessment District. I was on that board for a little while with him, so I went to City Council last night just to see him receive a little recognition for being on that. For people who don't know, the buildings downtown pay a slightly higher tax rate than other buildings, and it goes into things like the Christmas decorations or the holiday decorations you see that align Broadway during the season. It goes to kind of beautifying our Broadway. It's a selfless, it's a board. You don't make anything. But he was on the board. He chaired it. He spent a lot of time there. And so just a cheers to Harvey Fox.
I have to say, I think that's one of the most influential and competent groups in the city that exists is the special assessment.
Yeah, and least political. Both they are there they want to make Broadway special. They made Broadway special and they keep Broadway special. So
they really do incredible work. And Harvey has just been outstanding in how much he's contributed in terms of time, energy, everything to the city. So yeah, that's a great cheer. Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Robin, do you want to go next? Because I know Dan has something to say too.
Okay, well, my cheers are national politic based, so I'm just going to do them, even though.
Oh, now we're going to fight.
I know. I just have to cheer the DNC and some of the speeches that I've heard over the last couple of nights because they have brought me to tears, reminded me of how much I love being an American, just have been very inspirational and offered excitement and hope in a way that politics hasn't offered me, at least in a while. And so my cheer is to Kamala, Walz, Michelle, Barack, the whole crew, Raphael, Warnock, everyone who spoke. I mean, there were just so many incredibly dynamic speakers and they just really got me going. So that's my cheer. My jeer is for waking up in August and having it be 58 degrees out. I think this weather blows. So it's a pretty simple jeer.
Yes. And Dan, what about you? I don't know if you have a cheer or jeer or you want to share something with us?
I do have a cheer, a quick counterpoint to Robin. I'm loving this cool weather. After July, where we had how many days over 90 degrees? I'm walking the dog. My dog's got energy. I'm going out with my kids. I don't have sweat coming down the side of my face. But anyway, a cheer. Adam, you kind of got me started here. Lyrical Ballad, your brother's store, and I think Jason is his co-owner. Impressions of Saratoga, the Magic Moon, and several other stores since the last time we were on opened back up after that flood and fire shut them down for a long period, especially the beginning of the track season. These poor stores. The good news is, the cheer is, they finally were able to open up maybe 2 weeks ago, if I recall.
Real quick, I want to give a little story from that my brother shared with me. I thought it's very interesting. Just
Sure.
how, a bookstore, how lucky they were that this fire caused, or there was a water main break that caused a fire, but the water main was was right downhill from the bookstore, so the books didn't get wet. The fire didn't trip the sprinkler system. So can you imagine a used book? And it doesn't say. I'm not saying the fire system wasn't up to code. I'm just saying that for whatever reason, that part of the sprinkler system didn't discharge. So I mean, I don't know how you would ever rebuild a used bookstore like that if all the books got soaking wet. So the good Lord, I think, was looking down over that little bookstore in the shop. So anyway,
that is a cheer within a cheer. I love it.
Wow.
Folks, the point is, these people lost I don't know, a month of business. Lyrical Ballad, if you've never been there, those long hallways that go deep back and you get lost. How fun, right? And the Magic Moon, I've never been to the Magic Moon up until about a year ago. Of course, now my daughters love it. Impressions, they do so much for downtown. They also have the Dark Horse across the street in town. There's some other businesses in there, and I apologize. I should have done my homework and listed all of them. But patronize them, check them out, give them some support, give them some love. Midler's was not involved with that. Yeah. They just opened. Steve Midler, gotta love the guy. I know, Robin, you're friends with him, and I'm talking to him a little bit more, and I really enjoy him. Stop in at Midler's. It's a neat little store. Quick lunch. Right. Very inexpensive lunch. I love it. Great little stretch of Philo Street there. That's my cheer. I've got a bit of housekeeping here. You're not going to see as much of me going forward. I'm still part of it, of this podcast, and I'm honored to be part of this podcast, but I'm going to dial it back some, maybe alternating shows. I have 3 businesses, folks. This is a labor of love. There's no doubt about it, but it can be a huge time suck. We were all up late last night watching the city council meeting. I'm cooking my kids' dinner at 7. We were a little late because we were at the Washington County Fair. And so I'm cooking my kids' dinner, listening to it. That just can be a bit much. And so to run my businesses and make some money so I can feed my family, I'm going to dial it back a little bit. So look for me to be on perhaps every other podcast. I get great feedback from all you. All 3 of us get great feedback from a lot of you people. Please keep it coming, and thank you. And don't think Robin and Adam locked me out. I'm just dialing it back a little bit from my end, probably every other podcast.
How dare you prioritize feeding your family over our vanity podcast? Like, how dare you, sir?
That's a great description. Yes.
No, we do love doing this. It is a labor of love, but we're all here because we're super passionate about the city and informing people and weighing in on things in a way that's productive and helpful. But Adam and I are going to continue to do a podcast the day after city council meetings, and Dan will be joining us as a special guest as much as I can suck him back in, because we love the dynamic the 3 of us have. And you guys, we're almost at 100 episodes. Like, this is 97. Can you believe that? It's a lot.
That's a lot. Imagine. Yeah. I never thought we'd get, I was buoyant on this. I was buoyed by this all along. But if you would have said you're going to get to 100 episodes, I would have said, when?
I know. And recently, this podcast platform has been cited as being very influential in local politics. In areas that I'm not going to mention, but yes. Although I just want to say one thing before we end, and it's not going to make sense to anyone, but would either of you describe me as pushing a conservative agenda on this platform?
Absolutely. You lean conservative on certain issues, but you certainly do not push a conservative agenda.
Thank you. Just thought you'd weigh. I just wanted you to weigh in officially, publicly on that, because it was just one of the most laughable things I've ever read. But yeah, we love doing this. Thank you all for watching. Go like, share. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, and we will see you the first Wednesday in September.
Stay charming, Saratoga.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching.